Hey everybody, it's PDA Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. Sunday, Monday, happy days. Our guest on this episode is Donnie Most, the guy who played Ralph Malph on Happy Days. Now that show's from a long time ago, so I'm hoping that you know what it is. If not, it is one of the most iconic Americana shows ever. It took the mid-50s and made it normal, and we started making all kinds of shows from that. American Graffiti is tied to it. Grease is tied to it. Saying the Words Jump the Shark is tied to it. Laverne and Shirley, Mork from Ork, on and on and on. Joni Loves Chachi. All these iconic cultural things come out of this one show. And it's the thing that brought Ron Howard to adulthood. It's the thing that gave us Arthur Fonzarelli and saying, whoa, and hey, all these other things. And Don was part of that. And when you're part of something that's that big, that's that perfect, that's that important and influential, when it ends and when you move on, you got to figure something else out. And that's not always easy to do, but he's done it. So Don has continued to act, but he's also directed. And I love this part. He's become a crooner, and he sings the American Songbook of, jazz classics. Yeah, it's sort of, I guess you would say, Sinatra-esque, and we talk quite a bit about that. In general, it's just a great episode talking to a guy that's given us all so much joy and has lived this incredible life and has just seen America from a slightly different perspective than all of us, because he's seen it as playing its idyllic time, this classic character, and I think you guys will all dig who Don is. I absolutely loved having this conversation with him. He just sounds like such a good guy. He's been married forever and ever, and raised healthy, happy kids, and it's just neat to hear from him in this way. So it's Don Most, and thanks to Scott Husing, who produced this episode. He wasn't able to join us on the host side, but got to give him a shout out. In general, here's one way to support us. Share the show. Holy cow, it's Happy Days. Come on. We also had Susie Quattro on the show the other day. Leather Tuscadero. Happy Days. We know who she is because of this show. It's pretty incredible. Anyhow, Don Most is going to be our guest. Share the show. Tell people about it. That'll be a big help. One other thing you can do for us is go to Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. Hit that donate tab. Put a small amount of money in, whether it's monthly or just one big donation or both. Hey, we'll take it. We'll put it to work, and we'll help save veteran lives. All right, enough of me talking. Let's get on to it. Here comes my good friend, Don Most.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is Don Most, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
This is pretty cool. When you grow up watching people on TV as a kid, you think, I'm never going to meet Don Most, but here you are, and it's fantastic. And this is a cool thing, too. You may have no idea about this, but when I was a kid, one of the programs they had in school was they would give you the week's preceding script, right? And we're not going to make a big deal about, so for everybody who doesn't know, Don Most was Donnie Most, and he played Ralph Malph on Happy Days. We're really not going to talk about this. But I think this one element, I think, is good just for you to hear. So they would give us the script, whether it was the Waltons or Spider-Man or The Incredible Hulk, all those shows from that era that came out. Little House on the Prairie, Happy Days was one of them. They give you the script, and you would read out loud in class the show, and then you would watch the show like that week. And
oh, wow.
And hardly anybody remembers this, but I remember all the different things because it made such an impact on me to be able to, they're saying the words that I read, and it made me excited to read, out loud in class. And if it worked for me, and I didn't mind reading in class, that kid that maybe is a little bit less confident or whatever, or just needs a nudge, but, part of your work and your peers from that time frame, it changed how people read and appreciated it. Pretty cool, right?
Now, yeah, very cool. Now, you said they gave you the script. Who's they? Where'd they get it?
Some kind of scholastic company that probably sold a subscription to say, hey, we'll give you the scripts ahead of time. And it was that week. So you got to read whatever you guys probably had recorded it months in advance, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we shot the show probably exactly months before it aired. But that's cool that you got to read the script and then see the episode.
Yeah.
And see it come to life.
Yeah, yeah. It was such a great idea. I wish maybe they still do it. I'm not in grade school anymore, but
I don't know. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, it was a really neat program, and it's funny, like hardly any of my friends remember it. I mean, it was in the 70s after all, but it was just a neat way to learn.
Absolutely.
Hey, so all these years later, I mean, you're not acting on Happy Days anymore. You're actually doing your own artistic endeavors. You've got a movie out here. Let me put the banner up for that so everybody can see that. It's called MBF Man's Best Friend. You sing. In normal times, you sing in front of a big band for audiences as a crooner, which I love. I've got a secret desire to become a crooner later in life because...
Oh, really?
100% true. I would love to have you mentor me and get lessons and get better at it. Who knows if I'm ever good enough, but I love the vibe. But let's talk about Man's Best Friend and what that's about and go from there.
Yeah, it was a really great script that... these guys contacted me. They're a great group of filmmakers based out of Michigan, Collective Development, and they contacted me directly, on social media. And then once I spoke to them and saw the material, I put them in touch with my agent, and it's a really powerful script about a wounded vet who he's a Marine, and we see that he'd gotten injured in Afghanistan, and his he was a dog handler, so his dog wound up getting killed, so it had a huge effect on him. And now we see him back in Michigan trying to assimilate back into sort of civilian life, and he's got post stress syndrome, and something happens which I won't tell you. I don't want to give it away, but he winds up he gets arrested. And I play a defense attorney that works for a small nonprofit that helps wounded vets. So I wanted to defend him. And so it's a pretty dramatic role, very, very powerful story. And it's very different, obviously, than what people familiar with me as family members from Happy Days. But I love to play all different kinds of roles, I was never really like the character I did on Happy Days. I was pretty quiet in high school, pretty shy, but that's what acting to me was. The joy of it was playing people that were different than me. So I enjoyed that, and I still do. So this was a really, really good role for me, and it's on Amazon Prime. And if you don't have a subscription to that, it's also on Tubi, which is free, one of the other platforms. The movie came out really well, and my scenes came out great. I've gotten terrific feedback on it, great response. So I encourage people to check it out. And I did a second movie with the same group that's coming out this fall, another film with them this one's called Lost Heart. And in this one I play a small town pastor, but an interesting guy. He's kind of not your typical pastor. That's more of a comedy drama. It's not as heavy. But I'm excited about both of these.
You've worked in front of a live studio audience, so you know what it's like. Sometimes technical things happen. We just keep on rolling.
Oh, yeah. You never know.
You never know. By the way, you'll appreciate this. Matt Hoy, he sings with UB40 on the road, one of the versions of UB40, and he's like, Don Most, legend. And I don't even know if he knows that you sing well. So the two of you being on here, because Matt can sing like crazy. He sounds a lot like George Michael when he sings his own stuff. So just another wonderful singer and artist that we've had on the show. Obviously you're still working. You've worked the whole time, whether it was voice acting, singing, acting in front of camera. What kind of roles do you like to play that you just don't get enough of? Like they just don't hire you for that role. Being the lawyer, and I want to go back and talk about MBF again, but what are the ones that you're like, I wish I could get cast more as the whatever?
Well, that's what's starting to happen now. It was tough for many years after Happy Days. I left the show after the 7th season because I knew that it was starting, that I'd start to get so associated with that role and that genre, that kind of comedy. And that's not, it was only one facet of who I was. But it was difficult, because people wanted to cast me in a similar thing, and I wanted to play other kinds of roles. So, I started pecking away at it, and then, little by little, I break the mold a little bit more and more, and I got a recurring role in Glee several years ago, playing the dad to one of the regulars, and then I started doing a lot of independent films and playing a wider variety of roles. In this one film, I played sort of a semi-alcoholic ex-ball player who's alienated with his son, and so now is there a role? If you had asked me this question 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd be naming these kinds of roles. But luckily, they're starting. They've been coming my way more and more. I think as I've been getting older and certainly in a different age bracket, and also more distance and time from Happy Days, they've been coming more readily. So I just hope they keep coming. It's not like I can say, oh, I've always wanted to play this kind of guy. It's, whatever, if it's well written and it's an interesting character, and I could try to, really be true to it and bring it to life. That's what it's about. And there's not any one kind of character. And it could be comedy, very much so. It could be if it's a well-written comedy, and I'm not like adverse to doing that. I just want to balance it with a lot of different things.
Let's go back to MBF. When you were there, you're working as a lawyer for a Marine that gets into trouble. I wasn't a Marine; I was in the Army, but I had the same kind of thing. And I had a public defender, and that person was doing their best, but they were overwhelmed by the system. Do you have any specific knowledge about, what it's like to be a veteran and have to go through court? How did you bone up for this, or is this just in your wheelhouse acting wise?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do too much research beyond studying the script itself, and then of course getting to know the actor who wrote the script, who also played the lead, who played the vet. It wasn't like I needed to have too much of the technical knowledge. It was more about the passion of what this man had gone through, and then me doing my very best to help him in this situation. So I relied more of it from a little bit of being around other attorneys and knowing that world a little bit. So, you use whatever you can, and you put it all together into this, this alchemy, sort of this alchemy process.
Yeah, for those who were listening, you couldn't quite hear. I'll reiterate what he said. Basic. You know what? You can listen to the podcast version because I got the audio on the podcast side, and I'll turn it up when I post it. Yeah, I think you're right. The alchemy of trying to balance it all out and figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You never know where it's coming from.
Yeah. When you start so young as an actor, you have to constantly evolve to continue to get work. And there's going to be times where it's just fallow for you and you have to do other things. What's more challenging? The times in between the gigs when you're not on top of mind and you have to be rediscovered? Or is it harder to, transition into other things as well, like singing and other kinds of art, directing, writing, all these other options? What's the most challenging, do you think, as you go through a lifetime of work like this?
Yeah, I would say the most challenging time is what you alluded to is when you're not working, and the roles, aren't coming for whatever reason, or the period of time that it's that downtime. And what it forced me into doing, which I guess was ultimately a positive thing, is developing some of my own projects, and then working on where, I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to work on creating a show for myself as a singer, because I started out as a singer before I was doing acting. When I was pretty young, I was singing One summer, I spent the whole summer singing in nightclubs in the Catskill Mountains, up in all the hotels up there. So this was 5 years before I got on Happy Days. I was doing that. So it made sense for me to want to, I always knew I'd want to go back to doing that. But it was the timing and the kind of music that I love, sort of the Sinatra and the jazz standards and all that. They weren't very popular in the 70s and 80s. They started coming back, having a resurgence. So that's why 6 years ago I said, this is a time for me to do it if I'm ever going to do it. And so it forced those down periods forced me into, coming up with. I started doing more plays, more theater, which was great, and then I started directing some theater, which led to me then directing several independent films, and then the singing. Yeah, but being for an actor, the downtime that's the most challenging time.
Yeah, and then how do you plan your finances for something like that? I mean, at some point you have to make money. Especially when you're young? I mean, how do you balance the finances? Does someone teach you? How does that work out?
Well, I mean, I was lucky in that I started, I got on the series when I was 20. And so I started making, it wasn't kind of money they make in TV, more recently. We were making fractions back then of the big money today, but it was still good money for then. And, I was smart about it. My dad was an accountant and I had I went into college as an engineering major as my backup plan for acting. So I was always, pretty strong with math and science and all that. So, so I was conservative about money. And so luckily I was making money fairly early, and then I didn't squander it all. And, so to provide for those times when you're not working, you could fall back on.
One of the things, we had Lorenzo Lamas on the show, and, he's a guy who leads TV shows and has had several hits. And even he says, I found myself there auditioning for a musical. I'm not a song and dance man, but, I'm singing. And, because his name carries weight, he found himself doing different things. And he also, he had that show Renegade. And he said one of the problems was the show was successful, but then someone else bought it and then just wore it out like a rented mule. And so he's like, all the life in the show got used up in, say, 5 years, and then it got sold to somebody else, and then the residual checks got smaller and smaller. I had never thought about that. Like, you can overplay something, and something that could make everybody money for a long time can just be, decimated by overuse.
Yeah, the residuals, like on Happy Days, have gone down to very little. I mean, we get something, but it's not much. So I can't rely. I haven't been able to rely on that for quite some time, but at least it's still something. It's nice to get something. But yeah, I guess they could, overuse something and then compromise the value of it. I never really thought about it too much in that regard, because the amount of time, Happy Days has been on for so long. Eventually, the rate keeps going down and down,
Mm-hmm.
unless you owned a piece of the show,
right?
And then that's a whole different ballgame. But I wasn't in a position to bargain for that.
Yeah, you're just happy to get the work when you get it. Let's go back to singing the standards. I mean, being in the Catskills and singing, that's almost perfect. How likely was it that you would have just pursued that path and done that instead of ended up on an iconic TV show? Like, was that an actual thing, you think, for you?
I don't think so, because as I mentioned earlier, that kind of music, when I was 15, the music that was really was hot then was, all of the sort of what we look at as classic rock now. It was the late 60s and the early 70s. So the jazz standards and all that were kind of looked upon as my parents' and grandparents' music. And so it was people thought I was a little weird that I liked that kind of music, being a teenager. I made a decision, and my dad was influential in this after that summer of saying, he knew that maybe this wasn't the perfect path or the best path. And he knew I also enjoyed acting a lot. And he said, maybe you should take some serious acting classes. And if you really want to do this or if you want to pursue it for now, I mean, as long as it didn't interfere with regular school. So that's what I did. I switched gears and joined this workshop, an acting workshop that was really good, and sort of switched gears and put that music aside. Little did I know then that, 30 years later, that music would start having a big resurgence, the Great American Songbook and all the jazz standards. And I'm thankful it did, because, that's the music that was in my blood, and I love doing it. I mean, I just love doing it. I feel very fortunate that at this point in my career, all of a sudden there was that again. And to most very new. For me, it wasn't, but it was very new for them seeing me in that vein.
Do you want to write any jazz songs, or do you write music at all?
No, I don't. I love this. I mean, the songs they wrote back then were so amazing, and I'm not really a writer. I might want to try doing that sometime with somebody else. I would have to work with somebody who has experience in that, and then I could bounce off of them, maybe get ideas, whether it be musically or lyrically, off of somebody else and work with somebody. So I'd like to try that at some point. Just haven't done it yet.
Do you follow any of we've had Sammy Nestico on the show. He was in Tommy Dorsey's band. He's composed music for 80 years.
Yeah, he was a very well-known arranger too.
You know him. Okay, good. Arranger. Yeah.
I'd heard of Sam Nestico.
Yeah, he's incredible. And we had him on the show, and he's in his 90s, and he talks about how, he predates the electric guitar, and a trombone was a soloing instrument back then. If the audience can imagine, it wasn't driven by the piano or anything else. It was driven by horns a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. The trombone as a solo instrument. Yeah. So he was a trombonist. Okay. I wasn't sure.
Yep. Yeah, he's a trombonist, and he's written and performed with everybody. So with the COVID thing, you're not able to go out and play, the venues that you normally play. How do you keep the saw sharp on acting and on singing?
Yeah, good question. On the singing, luckily, with the technology today, I do a lot of sort of vocal work and just practicing and playing, exploring, experimenting on my computer. With all these different programs like GarageBand. I could bring tracks in there and then, record, do a lot of recording. It was very helpful to me, because then when I have a CD out that I did called Mostly Swinging. And it's, with a great big band of some of the top jazz recording guys in LA, and a producer arranger named Willie Murillo, who it was like, he was born, it was almost like he's from that era. He knows that music and arranges for it brilliantly. So I did the CD, and so working at home is, I couldn't do that when I was 15, 20 years ago. You'd have to, work with a band, be a part of a band, or hire a piano player to rehearse and all that. Now I just get on my computer and stay sharp. And try different songs, different styles. Mm-hmm. So that's been really wonderful. On the acting side, it's a little tougher, although I've done a few readings where people wanted to, you do a reading of a script because people want to hear it and see if they need to make changes, and that we've been doing those on Zoom. Mm. So I've done several readings. The acting I've done for so long that I don't need to work on that as much as, say, the singing, because it's just, I've been doing it for, like I said, so long. And also, you learn just from life. and if you're stay aware and present, have good observational skills, you can still work on that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, and you've done it for a long time, so there is a defined, tool shed that you already know, that you've already been into.
Yeah.
Growing. So, did you raise kids here in LA or no?
Yeah. I've been married to Morgan for 38 years,
Wow, congrats.
and thank you. And we have two daughters. One of them is living in Boulder, Colorado right now, and the other's on the Tahoe, Reno area. So it's tough because we don't get to, see them, especially during these times. It's harder, really hard. So we miss them, and we're trying to figure out, ways we're going to go visit somehow.
Right. But they didn't pursue show business at all, doesn't sound like.
No, they didn't. Which I was not too disappointed, because I know how tough and unfair the business can be. So I was happy that at one point, my younger daughter was thinking about when she was like 10, 11. So I didn't want to discourage her. So she said, all right, well, you have to take a class for acting. And all. So she was doing that, and she was doing pretty well in the class. But then I got her with an agent, and she went out on a couple of auditions, and just, I think the experience was so, negative for her. She didn't like it, and she's all of a sudden lost the interest in wanting to do it. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, then that's fine. But if I was okay that she lost interest.
Yeah. Let's go back and talk a little bit more about MBF. When you get this role, what made you want to take it? I mean, you read the script, you're like, yeah. I mean, because you could do what you want to do acting wise. You don't have to take that role. But what stood out for you?
Well, again, it's the script is, the play is the thing, as Shakespeare said, and when you see a really good script, they stand out, and it was very well written, and the part, I was surprised at the dimension that they gave this character, and then what also happened was I talked to the director and the writer, and I told them, I said, it's really good. I really like the part. I said, and as they were discussing this character, I had questions, and they were giving me backstory to the character. And I said, that's great, but I think there's a scene there that's missing. We need to have a scene that the audience will get to learn a little bit about that backstory, and will understand why this guy is the way he is a little bit better. And they were very open to it. They agreed with me, and then they wrote a scene based on what I, had said to them, and it was a really excellent. DJ Perry, the writer, did a great job, and so it's all in the, for me, for any actor, it's the writing. If the quality of the writing is really good, you don't really have to give it too much thought.
And when they call you with the script, do you ask like, "Hey, why me?" Like, I mean, are you curious about why they thought you were a good fit?
Oh, that's good. Interesting question. Yeah, because what happened was somehow it did come up, and I think DJ, who he's also a producer on, he wrote it. He's the star in this one. He plays the vet, and he's a producer. And he told me that they were looking for somebody who could handle not just the drama, but there were little elements in some of the scenes of a certain kind of I wouldn't say comedic, but a certain lightness or a sense of humor about the guy. And they were looking for that. And I think what happened was they had cast somebody in a different role, and they were looking at the agent, his agent, and who else they handled, what other clients. And I was a client of the same agent. And they looked and they went, oh, wow. let's take a look at, and they looked at my reel, my acting reel where I have samples from different kinds of shows, where some comedy, some drama. And they were like, oh, wow, he'd be perfect. That's how that came about.
I like it. Yeah, it's always interesting, the choices that were made. We just had on a couple of producers yesterday, Mark S. Allen and Howard Bird, and just how they put movies together, because, and this, every movie is an impossible project. It's not supposed to work. You're not supposed to get funded. All these things come up, scheduling, gosh, it makes things impossible. But he focuses on production. I'm going to get this done. And he looks for people specifically, that can do the job, but are also similarly reliable and like, we'll get this thing done on time, one take. And it's neat to hear all the different ways of approaching the problem of creating a movie.
Yeah. If you haven't been around it firsthand to see it, or even as an observer, I would think a lot of people just don't really have the appreciation of everything that goes into it, because you just see the finished product and it comes off pretty seamless and flows. But if you watch the actual process, people are usually pretty surprised and amazed of what it takes to have it come off that way. It's not easy, and it takes a real team of talented cast and crew, all working together, with the director at the helm leading it and making sure it's all sort of serving the story and the vision. That's why the really great movies, they're few and far between. The ones that really come off great.
Yeah. What comes off great to you? What do you love when you, like, recently, the movies you've seen?
I'm not the right person to ask, because I haven't been, for some reason, in the last few years. I used to watch movies and TV, but I stopped watching a lot over the last few years, and it's hard to really give you a reason why. So I don't, I haven't watched a lot. I did enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I really liked that, and I did see the biopic about Judy Garland, and I thought that was great. And I know there have been some other great movies. I'm just woefully behind, and I need to catch up. But
yeah.
But I grew up, the movies that I grew up, in the late 60s, it was a very fervent time, sort of a renaissance time in movies. So, I grew up when I was turned 16, 17, 18, and really loving the wave of movies that were being made then, like Midnight Cowboy and The Graduate, of course, with Dustin Hoffman, and some of the great Bogdanovich films that were coming out, Last Picture Show, and Nicholson. I was a huge Nicholson fan when Five Easy Pieces came out, and Easy Rider, and then Chinatown. So, those were the movies that where I became into it in a way, and the acting bug hit me very, especially Nicholson, and Paul Newman, of course, and Dustin Hoffman.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
Especially Nicholson, and Paul Newman, of course, and Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, I reached a point of saturation with TV because, growing up, I'd watched a lot of it, and you see the same beats, the same gags, the same over and over again. And it kind of gets like, okay, I've seen this in Cheers, and before Cheers, it was, MASH. So you reach a point where you're looking for something new. So like that show, Big Bang Theory, and there's nothing wrong with that show. It's just, I had seen all of those jokes. It's just in a different setting, or like all of the family shows. You definitely can reach a saturation point. But
I guess so. I guess that's part of why I kind of lost interest after a while, and I stopped watching shows. But but then there's some new things that come. Like I was watching Maisel, Marvelous Miss Maisel, and I was enjoying a lot of that. And there's some good things being done. I know I talked to a lot of my friends in the industry, and especially the dramas, because they spend so much more time than they used to on the Netflix dramas or Amazon or HBOs and all that. So I know there's great work being done, and I do have to catch up to it. But you're right. There's also a saturation point with a lot of shows.
yeah. So if you're not watching TV and movies a lot, just for whatever reason, and you're not on the road touring, what the heck are you doing with your free time?
Good question.
Yes.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you what my wife and I have been catching up on a lot of things around the house that we've been meaning to do for a long time in terms of organization and cleaning up and rearranging. A lot of projects like that, that had been put aside. I love golf, and I still get out to the range to practice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, practice golfing. It must be, and we don't want to spend time on Happy Days because that happened 40 plus years ago, but it must just be wonderful to be appreciated, and to be part of, there's no, that you reach a bar of greatness, and Happy Days is well above that bar, where the show just changes how America is. What is it like today to be part of that family, to have that appreciation from the generations that have loved the show?
That it is a wonderful thing, and I've come to appreciate that a lot more, in these years, than probably when I was on the show. I think with time, and so many different generations of people that have been exposed to the show, and because they watch it, they go back and watch the repeats and have come to appreciate the show even more. That it's wonderful feeling, that when I go out to certain events, not now during COVID, but when you're out in the public and meeting people, and you see the affection that they have for the show and the characters, and in many cases, people get emotional because they talk about what it meant to them. People telling me these tough times they were going through, and how the show would be an escape for them, and it be a source of laughter and some happiness, and as an escape from what they were going through. And it's a wonderful thing, and I feel I'm so appreciative of, and feel fortunate that I was able to become part of history in that way, and work with these incredible group of people, not only the cast, but Gary Marshall and our director, Jerry Paris, and some of the writers, wonderful writers that we had, and other producers. So I've come to appreciate and embrace that a lot more in these, more recent years.
Yeah. How is it as your career progresses and you lose people like Gary Marshall and that kind, and they move on, like watching the Brady Bunch, and you see there's fewer and fewer of them left. Does that impact you at all in any way? Because on the fan side of things, it's like, wow, like these things are changing. There's hardly anyone left from Gilligan's Island. Does that resonate with you at all, or is this just part of life?
I don't know. I mean, it resonates definitely. I mean, my wife and I went over to visit Marion Ross last night, and even with the COVID, we kept our distance, and we ate outside, and she's getting up there, and of course we lost Tom Bosley 8-9 years ago, and
right.
and Al Molinaro and Erin Moran, and Pat Morita. So it certainly resonates with me, and you have a different perspective as a result on what the show was and what it means, and the time left, and I feel I feel like there's still so much more that I want to do
Hmm.
that I have yet to do. And that's why I was getting very excited about all these roles that have been that I was starting to do, and it was getting some real momentum. And then COVID hit, and all production stopped, and there was another movie I was supposed to be doing in Europe, actually, and then they had to postpone, and then other projects had to postpone. So it was a little frustrating when things were really starting to cook,
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that this will all be back to some semblance of normalcy soon, and I'm anxious to get back and do some really interesting roles in all different kinds of projects. And Happy Days will always be there, and people will know me from that. But I think that I want a whole different part of me to come through as an actor and balance the work that I did on Happy Days, as I think I alluded to earlier.
You mentioned what the show means. What does Happy Days mean? What does it mean for you?
Well, what it means mainly to me was the opportunity. I feel like it was, lightning in a bottle that all these people came together. You have to give the producers a lot of credit for putting together this cast and assembling this particular group of actors and people. It was a combination of that, of their talent, because they were all very talented. You look back now at the cast and what people have done, and you realize, this was not a group of people like, I think back at the time, the industry kind of looked at the show as a piece of fluff, and they thought a bunch of us were a bunch of kids hanging out, having fun, But we took it very seriously, and we worked hard at it to make it look easy. But there were a lot of talented people there, like Ron Howard. He went on to do a few things, Henry Winkler, of course, who just last year won the Emmy for Barry, and Tom Bosley, who had won the Tony on Broadway for Fiorello, and Marion Ross, an incredibly talented actress, and everybody, and Anson, who I'm great friends with Anson, and everybody was great. And Gary Marshall and Jerry Paris, who had worked together on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and they were brilliant. And so, when that's what the show means, the behind the scenes was just as good to me as everything else, because the discussions we had and the collaboration, it was a great learning period and a period of growth, an incredible environment to be in.
I mean, you said you're not done. You've got a lot of things that you want to do. Give us a peek. I mean, actor, director, singer. Is there going to be another title in there, another slash, or what's coming up, man?
Well, I have several projects that are in development, and I'm talking to some producers. One that I wrote with my wife, a script, a feature, and I would be directing it. They're very excited about it, the producers, and they think, they're in the process of trying to get the financing put together, but they feel confident. So I'm hoping that's going to go. Have another project that's a TV series that I would probably be a director, but maybe act in as well as one of the main characters. 2 other feature film projects that one I would maybe direct and one I would probably be a producer. So, those are the things that you can work on now, and then hope that we'll be able to find the right home for it. And in terms of acting, there's one film that I was supposed to be doing in Prague, and I'm hoping that will resume once we're allowed to travel and all that. And then, I'm hoping a whole bunch of other things are going to start coming as a result of what I'm doing now, of the things that I have recently been doing.
Do you have plans to retire, or do you just plan to keep working until it's impossible to work anymore? I mean, you have to be thinking ahead. Like, you only get so much. I mean, Hal Holbrook's still acting, so I guess, you can go on as long as you want. But how do you look at the future?
Well, I know there's a lot I still want to do. And with the singing, I'm doing another album. I was recording it in Nashville with producer named Tony Mantor, and it was going great. And then we had to put it on hold, we're about 2/3 done. So I want to do a lot more with the music and with the film projects, directing and acting. I don't know how many more years, I'm thinking for at least another 5-10 years. But after that, I don't know.
Yeah. But that's plenty good. 5-10 years is all you're supposed to worry about. I wanted to ask you, because you're such a Sinatra fan, I think Nancy does this well, his daughter. She, that Boots Are Made for Walking song, she told her dad not to sing it because it would be cruel if he sang it. But if she sang it from her point of view, it would be different. And she did that again with One Shot of Happy, Two Shots of Sad. Bono wrote a song for Frank, and Frank just could never get, he was too old. But she took it and she sang it from a different perspective, like about her dad, instead of singing it from the first person. So do you look at these standards? Because you can do whatever you want with them. You can sing them traditional, or you can take them and, drop them down, into a minor chord and sing it more reflective. And do you think that way, or how do you approach these classics?
Well, so far, my first album, the swinging, mostly swinging, I did them pretty close to, the versions that I loved, except with Willie Murillo, his arranging, he would bring it to, let's say it was made famous in the 40s or the 50s. He brought a bit more of a modern sound to it in terms of the arrangement, still keeping the basic integrity of it, the feeling of it, but putting it a little bit more on steroids, so to speak. But in terms of the interpretations, I didn't do anything, very avant-garde or change it into like do an up-tempo song and turn it into a very reflective ballad. On this new CD we're doing a little bit more of reinterpreting things where it's not quite maybe the way that I remembered it, but we're doing a little bit of that. And I have been experimenting more and more with that at home. Those are the kinds of things that I have been playing with, trying something that I've never done, taking a song and doing it in a completely different sort of vocal approach and feel. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be doing more of that. I'd like to try doing more and more of that. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something I've been playing around with at home.
And then I love your Christmas album. I was listening to it. It's actually, here's a good review. I wish there were more songs. It was such a short album.
Yeah.
And you're singing, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. What a great song. I would like you to put a couple more songs out on the Christmas side so we can get you a full, hour long of singing those tunes.
Yeah. I'll have to talk to the producer and say, hey, let's fill it out and then re-release it so it'll be a full CD as opposed to sort of, right now it's like 5 songs.
Yeah, like an extended play, yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to talk to him about that.
Good. Yeah, we need more Christmas music. We always do. It's just, it's the best holiday for music. And yeah, those classics redone now, I think that there's room there. Chris Isaak did a great Christmas album where he Chris Isaac'd all the songs, like it's like he did Melikaliki Maka, he did it, but he did it in his own style, and yeah, there's room for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to check back with him on that and see what we can come up with.
I like it. Hey, you were born in Brooklyn. You've lived in LA forever. Are you a Dodger fan?
I was I was a big Yankee fan because I was, I didn't leave New York till I was 20. So, I grew up in the era where Mickey Mantle was and Roger Maris and that whole period. When I came out here, initially I was still a Yankee fan for many years, but then, at a certain point it shifted because I'd go to Dodger games and I could see all the Dodger games on TV. And then Joe Torre, who, was with the Yankees, then came out and started managing the Dodgers. And then I shifted over and became a Dodger fan for a while. And then for some reason, it's similar to what I was talking about earlier when I started losing interest in watching TV and stuff. I never thought this would happen, but I lost interest in, and I stopped following baseball, which I never thought would ever happen. But about 4 years ago, I don't know, just kind of your priorities, I guess, shift at a certain point, and I just wasn't interested. It's so weird. It's so weird that happened, because I was so fanatical and ardent baseball fan for so long.
For all of us out here in COVID land who are trying to sort it out, we've all got a chance to be reinvigorated with our youthful artists, because every kid starts out as an artistic machine. What's your advice to all of us who are, closeted crooners, or, failed painters, or not enough poets? What's your advice to someone who's wanting to explore their artistic side?
Well, people ask me this in regards to like acting, especially, obviously. And what I usually tell them, it depends. If you could do all those things as a hobby, and it could still be great, you could still try seeing where it can take you, not only how far, how good you could become, and what style is right for you, and find out who you are in terms of an artist. You could do that as a hobby. To pursue it as a profession, it's so hard. I know from the acting side and singing, and I usually tell people, if you want to do it on a professional basis, you have to do it. You have to want to do it more than anything else, and you can't think of doing anything else. Otherwise, I say, I wouldn't pursue it as a career, because it's the competition. And, I think the competition's harder now than it was when I started. It was always hard. It was always tough business, but it's probably even tougher now. You just, if you want it that much, and that's all you can think about doing, then go after it with everything, and take classes and observe classes, and do it in volunteer in theater as an actor, and see and get exposure to it as much as you can, and then put everything into it. But if you don't have that kind of passion, then you could still explore it on a personal level, as a hobby, and keep your sanity by being in a business that won't be so so outrageous, which it can be sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great advice, because you're right. Because the people that are doing it at the highest level, it's all they are doing. Like, they are completely committed, and it's very hard to find room when someone's just that ravenous, that competitive towards those jobs. I think it's great advice. Just in general, man, I really have appreciated this hour that we spent together. I know everybody has been commenting like crazy, and they've appreciated the time that you've spent with us too. It's just neat to be able to hang out and talk to someone who's still creative, still producing things, whether you're directing or singing or acting. Even in a time of COVID, you're finding things to do. And I really appreciate you coming on, Don, and sharing your story with us.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate all some really, what's the word? Not provocative questions, but insightful ones. Ones that are a little different than the ordinary ones, and it made me have to think a little bit, and made me have remember certain things in a different way. So I appreciate that, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. One more quick question. I meant to ask you this, and I'm going to, when's Happy Days getting, no. My real question is, you know what? It's good enough, man. We've had a great time. I'm just going to call it good. It's okay. Wonderful to have you on. We'll do another one of these when you have music to put out. Would love to catch you up with you anytime that you're out there doing it. Thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, this is Don. Everybody's been so excited. I got to tell you, in the notes on my phone, it's all I love Don most. So we love you,
that's
man.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to hear. And let's do it again. Maybe when my next album is coming out or the next movie or something. you
Yeah,
know?
and I got to see you live here when you're in Southern California. I got to come out and check you out somewhere. And
Yeah, well, I came to, New York. I performed at 54 Below a bunch of times, and at the Iridium Jazz Club and the Cutting Room. So I'm hoping to get back to New York when this is over and get back on stage there.
yeah, and Cindy Green says Christmas album. You got to do it. So you're committed now. We want it. You've got some people going to buy it. All right, I'm going to press the stop button here. Stand by.